Every year, about this time, government at all levels embark on a process which is intended to culminate in the presentation of a budget, which should determine the direction of policies and programs which existing administrations propose to execute in the new year. The present administration, under the leadership of Prince Dapo Abiodun, addressed the State House of Assembly for the third time as he presented the proposed budget for the year 2022, which was tagged Budget of Restoration. This followed a series of consultations which came in the form of virtual town hall meetings organized for the 3 senatorial districts of the state. Additionally, a statutory Treasury Board session, popularly known as Budget Retreat, was also convened where heads of ministries, departments and agencies came forward with their proposed program and expenditure towards furthering the course of building our future together mantra of the Prince Dapo Abiodun-led administration in the state. In Ogun State, particularly under this administration, what would normally happen is that the synergy and harmonization of the ideas and suggestions drawn from presentations made by citizens of all ages and walks of life form a large chunk of what goes into the budget proposal which the state governor presents to the House for consideration and approval as required by the Constitution of the Federal Republic. And on Tuesday, 30th of November, the Ogun State Governor, Prince Dapo Abiodun, stood before members of the House led by Speaker Olakunle Oluomo to deliver the proposed budget for the 2022 financial year to the legislators.
It is with a great sense of duty that I stand before this honorable House for the third time to present the third full-year budget proposals for our dear state. The first full-year budget proposals, as contained in the 2020 appropriation bill, was presented Thursday, 20th November 2019. Our hope then was that the process of the Building Our Future Together agenda that we commenced in 2019 will go full throttle in 2020. That is exactly what we began to do in January 2020 before the coronavirus struck in February, disrupting everything, including our way of life. Amongst drawbacks, the pandemic constrained our revenue earning capacity, thus forcing us to eventually review downwards the budget size in July 2020. We are grateful to God Almighty for seeing us through all the difficult times. We are equally grateful to President Muhammad Buhari for all the support we received from the federal government through this battle. Appreciation goes to all our frontline health workers and other responders who are still helping us to curtail and contain this pandemic. Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the Ogun State House of Assembly, in the outgoing year, our administration remained committed to recovering from the shock of the pandemic and be on our feet again. The good news is that we're indeed getting back on our feet, and the economy is steadily recovering to its flourishing glory. And now that we're on our feet again, it is the right time for us to work together with the same resilience of the human spirit. Therefore, the main task in year 2022 is to increase our pace of the implementation of our development as already designed and encapsulated in our administration's Building Our Future Together agenda.
The setting was a State House of Assembly and expectations were high as citizens of the state, including former governors, elder statesmen, captains of industry, politicians, artisans, royal fathers, among others, gathered together in a manner illustrative of the collaborative governance rhetoric and strategy of the state governor, Prince Dapo Abiodun to have a feel of the direction of governance in the incoming year. Christened Budget of Restoration, the financial plan, according to Prince Abiodun, is aimed at increasing the pace of the state's development as already designed and encapsulated in the administration's Building a Future Together agenda, with the proposed amount put at 350.74 billion naira. The governor set out the 2022-2024 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper and their parameters for the 2022 appropriation bill, which comprises recurrent, personnel, debt servicing, overhead costs, capital expenditure, and stabilization fund, among others.
In line with our decision's strategic imperatives and implementation roadmap, the 2022-2024 medium-term fiscal strategy of this administration is hinged on 5 main development pillars. As part of preparation and in our commitment to development, we held 3 town hall meetings to give voice to our people and shape our priorities. In 2022, we will continue to accord priority attention to completion of existing projects, projects with revenue potential, projects consistent with priorities articulated in the state economic development strategy, projects that can enhance employment generation, parameters and fiscal assumptions underpinning the 2022 appropriation. Mr. Speaker and other honorable members of the Abeokuta House of Assembly, the 2022-2024 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper set out the parameters for the 2022 appropriation bill.
Governor Abiodun highlighted the targeted revenue estimates along with the expenditure for 2022.
Total state funding is estimated at 350.7 billion in 2022. This includes Ogun State Internal Revenue Service (OGRS) estimate of 56.3 billion, and other ministries, departments, agencies estimated at 96.87 billion, totaling 153.17 billion. Statutory allocation, i.e. FAC and VAT, is expected to be at 73.01 billion, while capital receipt is estimated at 124.56 billion, i.e. internal and external loans, including grants and aids. Planned 2022 expenditure. The aggregate expenditure of 350.7 billion is proposed for the state government in 2022. We have been able to achieve a 51% capital expenditure in view of the need to drive our developmental objectives. Recurrent expenditure. Personnel costs. In 2022, the personnel cost estimate took the largest portion of 75 billion under recurrent and is allocated to paying salaries and allowances in ministries, departments, and agencies. Public debt charges. We remain committed to meeting our debt service obligations, specifically to attract capital investment into the state economy. Hence, we have provided 28 billion for this in 2022. Overhead costs. The total overhead cost of MDAs and government-owned enterprises is projected at 51 billion in 2022. Capital expenditure. Physical capital expenditure. An aggregate sum of 170 billion is expected to be available for physical capital projects in 2022. This is an increase of 10 billion over the 2021 approval of 160 billion to chart our economic recovery growth through investment in physical projects that will create an enabling environment for investment, employment, and trigger redistribution of resources. The capital expenditure in 2022 remains focused on the completion of as many ongoing projects as possible, as well as the commencement of new ones. We have also made efforts to ensure equity in the distribution of these projects and programs in the proposed budget. In the coming weeks of budget defense by HMDA, the State Assembly will be provided with the list of some of the most critical projects which we must work collectively to ensure they receive adequate funding.
The governor then outlined the proposed sharing formula for disbursement along the lines of the Ishaya agenda of the present administration.
Key physical capital expenditure in the 2022 budget includes infrastructure, which is namely ICT, power, transport, industrialization, 82 billion. Social welfare and well-being, which is health, housing, environment, physical planning, special needs, 86 billion. Education, which includes early childhood, vocational, technical and tertiary, 56 billion. Youth empowerment, 6 billion. Agriculture, 15 billion. Enablers, that's general public service, public order and safety, stabilization fund, judiciary, legislature, pension and gratuity, 106 billion. Our key allocations in the 2022 budget in line with functional classification as follows. Education, 56 billion and 71 million.21 is 16%. Health, 35 billion and 73 million.51 is 10%. Infrastructure, 77 billion 775 million.77 is 22%. Other details will be as provided. Mr. Speaker, and all other honorable members of this 9th Ogun State House of Assembly, as I lay before you the 2022 appropriation bill today, we must remind ourselves that this event is another symbolic representation of our joint mission towards the realization of Ogun State of our collective dreams. We have done it before. We can do it again. The challenges that lie ahead of us in the coming year dictate that we should all join hands. There are grounds to cover, but even at that, we must also make our people see our commitment and sincerity. While we should not stand and promise them that we will do everything, we should also do everything that we promise. That is the essence of this document. That is the character of this administration. We are a promise-keeping administration.
And while presenting the 2022 appropriation bill to the House, Governor Abiodun showered praises on the people of the state for their cooperation and understanding.
Let me use this opportunity to appreciate all our people for the trust and confidence they repose in our administration. We appreciate the invaluable support and cooperation and prayers of all stakeholders. Our gratitude goes to all our political class, our revered royal fathers, our elder statesmen, our religious leaders, our developmental partners, our non-government organizations, our market women and men, and indeed our public servants. We also thank our critics as our supporters continue to motivate us. Our critics are also challenging us to do more. That is the whole essence of democracy. I thank all of us. Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members of the House of Assembly, it is a sense of responsibility and service that I present the 2022 appropriation bill of Ogun State for your consideration.
Prior to this, he had expressed similar appreciation to the House over their support for his administration's developmental efforts since inception.
Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the Ogun State House of Assembly, I express once again my appreciation for the tremendous support from the members which we have enjoyed since the commencement of our administration, especially towards the passage and final approval of both the 2020 and 2021 appropriation bills, as well as the revised 2022-2024 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal paper. Whilst I present a summary of the budget proposals for the coming year, The Honorable Commissioner of Finance and the Honorable Commissioner of Budget and Planning will in due course provide the full details of the budget proposals for the next year.
Meanwhile, Speaker of the State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Olakunle Oluomo, had earlier welcomed the governor to the hallowed chamber for the all-important event, using the opportunity of his visit to lay some demands at the governor's table.
I have the mandate of my people, the 26 members of this house, including myself, to appeal to you, sir, to use the title of this year's budget of restoration, to restore our honor and dignity at home by approving our constituency allowance project. Constituency allowance project is supposed to be an annual thing as is applicable at the national level and the world over. We are counting the clock and the calendar, and we are moving into our third year. Constituency project is that little toilet that the member is able to do in the remotest area of his constituency. It is that market store that honorable member can easily do at their own rural of the rural. While we appreciate all the efforts we are doing at the state and local government level, we are appealing that you should please restore our honor and dignity at home, so that we also can point to one or two things that will attract to our constituency through constituency development project.
Giant strides caught up with the State Commissioner for Finance and Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Dapo Okubadejo, who spoke on efforts by government to ensure a robust and all-encompassing budget, among other topical issues of relevance.
Part of the reforms that we introduced in the preparation of the budget was the engagement of the stakeholders and the development of the medium-term expenditure framework. The reason why we considered it extremely important to have this engagement with the stakeholders through our stakeholder meetings that we did virtually for the 3 senatorial districts was to get their input and feedback into the process of budget preparation. And so therefore, after the conclusion of that, and also the Treasury Board meeting that was held 2 days, so we came up with a very robust feedback, and also taking stock of the actual performance of the 2021 budget as at Q3 2021, we were able to put together a revised medium-term expenditure framework, which made this year's budget that we've referred or christened as budget of restoration, an estimate of about 350.7 billion naira. The concept of restoration itself was actually as a result of the devastating effect that was experienced by all and sundry from 2020 and 2021 as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and also all of the initiatives that this current administration have put in place to ensure a much faster recovery from the devastating effect of COVID. That is the essence of the budget of restoration.
Royal fathers and other eminent personalities also share their thoughts on their expectations for 2022.
As regards expectation, it's just for the government to build on what they have been doing, which is critical, which is one, the even development of our dear state, address all areas, infrastructure, education, and technology. Government cannot do it all, but at least let's continue to see them build on what they have been doing in the last 2 years. But I wish them the best, but I'm very full of hope, very high hopes, and I'm sure that we will not be disappointed at the end of the day.
Budget is an intention of how much is coming in and what you are going to spend what on. So we, as usual, we expect an improvement in whatever we did last year. We expect that the government would have found out areas where there has been wastage, areas where there have been inadequate funding, and they will make necessary correction. Keep supporting the government, pay your tax, and see whether the goodies of life will not come to you.
You can say that this government started in a way that is different from the others. This government is the only government I have seen that approaches people's needs directly without having to look at what it thinks it wants to do. It has done so many of these projects to the direct need of the people. And just like the last year budget, I also expect that this budget will address the immediate need of the people, instead of having to spend government money on projects that are not relevant to people's interests.
Budget presentation is an annual ritual that a government must do in order to appropriate expenditures and different projects to each agency and ministry. And so this has been done for the past 2 years. This year we're expecting much better projects. We're expecting much better performance from the governor. The governor has been doing so well to the admiration of the people. And so we know that this year's presentation will touch on every aspect of government, the agric sector, the educational sector. It works, all agencies, as a matter of fact, they will touch on it. And I hope that this will improve the livelihood of our people and it will bring succor to the people of Ogun State in general.
First of all, I want to appreciate the fact that the current administration led by His Excellency Prince Abeokuta MFR is working, and Ogun State is really enjoying the dividends of democracy across board. Today is another epoch-making occasion in accordance with the provision of the Constitution of Nigeria that executive must present to the House the budget of the coming year. We are here today to witness that, and so far so good. This will give the governor the opportunity to give vivid account of his stewardship so far in the last 1 year. And I want to believe that the budget, by God's grace, if presented today, will be the one to consolidate on the efforts of the government so far. And the group of Ogun State is looking forward to a more rewarding activities on the part of the government coming year.
When the year is getting to an end, the people's expectation is always about the budget. And today is a very important day, because today is when we are expecting His Excellency, our governor, to come and lay the budget on the floor of the House. After which we will now need to look at it in detail and ensure it passes before the end of the year, so that by the time we are entering the new year, we'll be able to enter the new year with a new budget, and in order to meet the expectation of the people.
From the breakdown, the brief that has been given, I think it's good. There's a lot of emphasis on education. There's a lot of emphasis on another human capital development like health, another road, which is actually what we need. It's a continuation of the effort of the government, to restore hope and to restore, dignity in the state, and I think it's good.
Now, the budget proposal has been presented to the House, and the rest of us wait for the House to carry out its statutory role of essential scrutiny in fulfillment of the cherished separation of powers maxim, which is the basis of good governance which we all crave. In the meantime, the resolve of government towards this is irrevocably clear and conspicuous, and the present administration persists in ensuring the entrenchment of values, policies, and programs that continue to sustain the state in its place as the investor's destination of choice. The support of the citizens in this regard is therefore necessary as we gravitate towards the proverbial Canaan land. Ìgbéga ìpínlẹ̀ Ògùn, àjọṣe wa ni.